I'm back, and I got a hip new style with me. Now, I haven't been in my room in a while, but it feels a little bit different. You know, maybe there's something lurking around the corner. Maybe there's a systemic injustice hiding somewhere that I can't find. Can you find it? Let's take a look. Is it under here? Is it behind this? No. Is it... Oh, would you look at that? That's right, guys. Today I'm going to be talking about the Canadian justice system and how it sucks at drug policy. Because it's got to take a couple of steps forward towards decriminalization if we ever want to make any progress on this.
Hey, didn't we already decriminalize marijuana?
No, we did not. We legalized marijuana, and so now it's a product like tobacco or alcohol. You know, let me show you a helpful little graphic if you want. So, here's where marijuana is in Canada. And here is all of the other drugs. I'm talking heroin, cocaine, LSD, MDMA, all of it. And here, around, is where they should be.
So you want people to be able to shoot up heroin whenever they want?
Surprisingly, it actually doesn't encourage people to do drugs when we decriminalize them. It allows us to give people who are already addicted to drugs treatment options like rehab instead of sending them to big old metal boxes where they are not rehabilitated so that they can become functioning members of society. Crazy! It's almost like people who already don't do drugs aren't going to be encouraged to do drugs just because they can. For instance, if your grandmother was allowed to do heroin, I think she wouldn't. Because generally, people already have that stigma against drugs, and so they're not going to personally do it. People understand the consequences.
Says who?
Says the Canadian Centre for Substance Use and Addiction, you absolute buffoon! How did you not know that they put out a report supporting research and investigation into decriminalization policies because they have a wide variety of solutions to various problems associated with drug use, and they solve a lot of the things associated with the horrendous war on drugs? How did you not know? Ah, yes, the war on drugs. You know something about the war on drugs?
Yeah, I love the war on drugs.
Why would you love the war on drugs?
I am the ghost of Ronald Reagan.
Gross. What are you gonna do, haunt me? What are you gonna do? Wreck the economy of my bedroom? Not a chance, Reagan. Not a chance. So anyways, the war on drugs is horrendous in three ways. First off, from a human perspective, it sucks to be punishing addicts. Addicts are people with medical problems who are the victim, not the aggressor. If an addict is committing a crime, then sure, but punishing someone for possession of an illicit substance isn't how we should be dealing with their problems. Secondly, from an economic perspective, we need to have these people in actual economic positions in society rather than in prison. They have addiction problems, which is horrible, but the way to cure those addiction problems and the way to get them back into society, back working and back providing for their families and their communities isn't by throwing them in prison. Finally, from the perspective of theory. Now, in conflict theory, drug criminalization is done to oppress the poor and to further discrimination against marginalized groups. Now, let's take a look at that.
But that's just a theory.
Oh, no, Ronnie. Okay, you don't get away with this one. Thanks to you and your party's actions, in part, we have a lot of real great examples about how the war on drugs, yeah, that's yours, hurts the poor, and how it heavily discriminates against black and brown communities. You know what's crazy? Your war on drugs is actually one of the biggest contributors to the incarceration gap between black and white people. Black people are incarcerated at a rate 5 times more than white people in the US. I'm gonna let that sink in. Alright. In addition to that, when we're looking at discrimination against the poor, you have set punishments on certain drugs in a certain way. The drugs associated with poor people, like crack cocaine, which was distributed in black communities, especially in the 80s, are punished higher than drugs that are very similar, like powder cocaine, which is punished at a much more lenient rate, which is more common among the rich and the white people. You know, those examples might be in the US, but even the UN agrees that Canada has a problem in our drug criminalization policy when it comes to discrimination, especially racially. I don't know about you, Ronnie, but to me it seems like these drugs were criminalized in the first place because they were popular with poor people, and it's easier to put them in prison cells than in rehab.
It is not. Name one country that decriminalized drugs and doesn't have hordes of crackheads and...
Portugal.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, Portugal decriminalized drugs. Decriminalized the crap out of them in 2001. They experienced positive effects including, but not limited to... Whoa! Look at all those effects. So cool, right? Wow, you know, it's almost like even in comparison to other countries in the European Union at the time, Portugal had a lot of positive effects when it came to drugs, treatment, addiction, mental health, sexual health, just because they decriminalized drugs. And it's almost like the countries in the EU with the most strict criminalization policies had the worst outcomes when it comes to drugs. So maybe we should take a look at them and take a look at what policies they've implemented, and maybe we should tailor that to our situation and put that in place here. Because we've got a crisis on our hands. And without doing anything about it, it's going to keep being a crisis. We've seen a lot of positive effects from the legalization of marijuana. And because of that, we can look to other drugs and see, you know, what have we been doing wrong in the past with these? That doesn't mean we necessarily have to legalize everything, but it means we have to do something. We have to do something to clean up our streets, to help the homeless and the poor and the racial minorities who've been targeted over and over again by drug policies over the last several decades. By the way, thank you to Glenn Greenwald and the Cato Institute for publishing that 2009 paper that gave me all the information for the Portugal drug policy. And thank you to the Canadian Substance Use and Addiction, not Institute, just Canadian, the Canadian Centre for Substance Use and Addiction for publishing their paper that gave me all the rest of the information in this regarding prescriptions for Canadian drug policy. They've all been very helpful in determining this, but seriously, as an end note, I'd like to say that this is some of the most important policy of our lifetime, and I think that aside from maybe the COVID pandemic, it should be the foremost thing on our minds right now. Thank you, and goodbye.
A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.